With all of the videos going up right now of all the big YouTubers who are quitting, I thought it would be fun to sort of explain to you why I'm not quitting and what pleasure I get out of making YouTube videos. Hello everybody, my name is Bill and this is Rust to Resurrection. Today I got a little bit of a different episode for you. This is going to be a combination of installing these wing nuts on the windshield episode. We've done this before on the Willys MB, but it's also going to be a little bit of me as a talking head, because today I'm going to talk a little bit about YouTube and a little bit about why I'm still here and a little bit about an anniversary that I've got coming up. Don't go away. Coming up next month, I have a little bit of an anniversary. I will have been 11 years on the platform, on YouTube, in March. It's been 11 years of interesting experience. With all of the videos going up right now of all the big YouTubers who are quitting, I thought it would be fun to sort of explain to you why I'm not quitting and what pleasure I get out of making YouTube videos, but more so about all the friends that I've made along the way because of YouTube, because of the platform. And I do want to give a shout out to a bunch of small YouTubers, the guys who are working on their own Jeeps just like I am, who are not necessarily experts on Jeeps or Jeep mechanics like I am not. We are all engaged in the automotive YouTube world simply out of pleasure, out of the idea that this is a great place for us to work on our antiques or our vintage cars and just talk about it. And I think that's where the magic lies in YouTube. Let's start installing these wing nuts. These are designed specifically to go into their location on the windshield frame. And typically, both my MB and the Willys CJ2, when the restorations were done, unless you are aware that this is the exact item that is supposed to be on the windshield, you're not going to know to go and find it. So most people just put in a giant bolt. One of the problems I have, this is coming out really well. Interesting, because this has the shoulder already milled into it. That's an interesting idea. I didn't realize that they made these. Maybe this is an original, I don't know. But we're going to use the wing nut that comes with it. I want to see if it fits first. I had a little bit of difficulty on the MB. Yeah, and I am on this one too. I'm going to have to shorten the length of the threads on this. But you can see how way long this bolt is. Now, Rust to Resurrection is a relatively new channel. I started this just over almost a year and a half ago. But this is an offshoot from my main channel, which is 6 Rounds Studio. I know some of you have come over from that channel, and I appreciate you making the transition with me. When I first started 6 Rounds, my intention was to just do YouTube for shits and giggles. I didn't have any real plan for it. I was building guitars over there. I'm still building guitars over there. And I was doing some upgrades and restoration work on my Jeeps. And a lot of you found 6 Rounds because of the Jeep content, because the algorithms pay so close attention to everything that a viewer does. If you watch one video on trains crossing an intersection, next thing you know, you're going to get handed 55 videos of trains crossing intersections. So the algorithms are getting more defined, the way they look at the content that you guys are watching. But the problem with it is that it becomes more and more specific and it becomes more and more difficult to get discovered. I'm not saying that as a complaint. When I started making these YouTube videos, like I said, it was mostly for shits and giggles. I didn't have any major plans to grow the channel or to become rich and famous, because trust me, I am neither rich nor famous, and this is just a fun thing for me to do. It's a creative way for me to engage with a greater audience, a greater network of people who are like-minded, people who like old vintage cars, who like old vintage Jeeps. So it's been a great way for me to connect. And I've met a lot of you, as I said, and many of you have offered me your insights, your suggestions, your experiences, and all of you have been people who are making YouTube videos on projects you're working on. None of you that I have discovered are actually experts in being mechanics or in Jeep restoration or vintage car restorations. You are enthusiasts who are learning to do both YouTube and restoring these old Jeeps. I'm gonna, again, at the end of this, I want to give you some channels that I'm going to shout out. I think they deserve some attention, so we'll do that towards the end of this. So anyway, over on 6 Rounds, I started doing guitars and Jeeps and woodworking, because woodworking is what I spent my life doing. But I also spent my life doing woodworking in the firearms field. And a good friend of mine, Jeff Ford, suggested to me one day that I ought to try and make a YouTube video showing one of my firearms restorations, which I did. And when I did that, the channel took off. The 6 Rounds took off, but it took off with a whole different genre of viewers, people who wanted to see firearms content. And all of a sudden, those of you who had come on board 6 Rounds for the Jeep content, the firearms content didn't make any sense to you. And it didn't make any sense to the algorithm. And that, like I said, that algorithm, whether we like it or not, is the boss. It is the method, the means that our stuff gets presented to viewers. So the channel was in conflict. So because the channel was in conflict, I moved the content off. I started a new channel on just Jeeps, and actually it's more comfortable for me this way, because I never have to worry about, when I'm filming, I don't have to worry about how I'm thinking about this video and how I'm going to make it relate to those folks that may not be interested in Jeeps. I tried one of those on the rifle carrier on the MB. I put that on both channels, and it was interesting. It did well on both channels, but that was really the only video that was a crossover video that sort of made sense. So as I said, anniversary coming up, 11 years on the platform, and it's been fun. It really has. It isn't just about doing the work on the Jeeps or doing the work on the guns. Sometimes, you know, literally it is, you have to be a filmmaker, a cameraman, a producer, an editor. You have to be all of these things and tell a compelling story that everybody wants to watch. And that can sometimes be the hardest part about filming YouTube videos. It is trying to be almost everything, or having all the hats, all the jobs, all in one setting, and produce something that people want to watch. That is the challenge that you take on. I've got to go down to the machine shop and cut these bolts. I'm going to bring you guys along. And when we come back, we'll do the install, but I'm going to talk more about the pleasures of being on YouTube and the great people that I've met along the way. So we're about 1/4 of an inch too long-ish. So I am going to remove this to right about there. Now I am going to take it off with a hacksaw. before we install these, I'm going to put a little bit of green paint on it to protect the raw metal that I created when I cut these. And I'll let that dry, and while it's drying, let's continue the conversation. Now, when I started YouTube, I was not a filmmaker. I was not a cameraman. I was not an editor. I didn't know anything other than what I had learned just by kind of snooping around and finding out what other people were doing. So I started filming with an old GoPro and an iPhone 5. Now, neither one of those are renowned for their quality. Now, that is an early GoPro. I mean, GoPros have come so far now. The iPhone 5 was an early iPhone, and it was good. The quality was good, but it's not like the new iPhone 10, 11, 12s. The cameras on those are, in some cases, close to film quality, and so I do use my iPhone in conjunction with my other camera gear, and I've got that set up for the close-ups over here. So as I got better at this, as I understood things better, and as time went on, I didn't go out and buy all this stuff at once. As I learned what it took to make a good quality video, I went out and started buying stuff. Like, for instance, I bought this light or set of lights. I've also got room lights that kind of brighten up the room, because without good light, the quality of the image that you're seeing isn't very good. I also bought a DSLR. That was much later, and I have these camcorders over here. So the DSLR camcorders, and I've got 3 camcorders that I use. And the camcorders are older, really old at this point, but they do a good quality. They do a good 1080 by 1920, which is what most of us are watching. I don't do 4K. 4K just takes way too much processing power for the computer that I've got. So you can really go down a deep rabbit hole with this stuff if you start trying to film and edit in 4K. And I personally don't know that I see enough of a difference for something like a small channel like this to make that even worth the expense. Down in my workshop, which is where we film 6-round studio mostly, we also have a jib crane. I bought a jib so that I could get these overhead shots and move the shots around and get it at different angles. So I did buy a jib crane. I bought a good one, a good carbon fiber one. And when you begin to figure this out, you don't need high expense things to do a YouTube channel. Like I said, most people today are simply mostly using their iPhones. This thing doesn't want to stand up, which is fine. I had to shut that off. There are things, depending on how deep you want to go into this, the amount of gear or equipment that you need. When you're doing a lot of close-ups, tripods, God, boys and girls, tripods, you end up using them, throwing them away, abusing them. Tripods are probably the hardest working tool that you're going to have, and it's also going to be the one that takes the most abuse. Try to buy a better one. Most of mine come out of Walmart. They're one of the Walmart's more expensive ones. I have bought one online, and the one that is actually on this camera right here is a fairly good, robust one. The one that's on the DSLR is also a fairly robust one. Again, depending on the weight of the camera, you want to make sure that the tripod will do what it's supposed to do. The one that I've got on this iPhone, it's a flimsy little thing, but I only use it for the iPhone, so it's all set up, and I can rapidly go to using it with the iPhone, and I can move it around into really tight spots, which is why I do that. So, getting into YouTube is not a tough thing to do. Doing it well, that's where just learning some basic skill sets, some basic understanding of what a good film is, learning framing, how to frame things in a way, how to light things in a way. Lighting is important, I've already mentioned that. Framing is important. The rules of third, learn the rules of third, sort of simple things. All right, I just did a test fit, and you can see that it's rubbing all the way around, so it is a little bit tight inside of here. A little rusty in there as well. I am going to add, believe it or not, a little bit of assembly lube. Looks good. I'll do the other one off camera. You guys don't need to watch that. It's just going to be a repeat of what I just did. I want to end this video talking about some of the people that I've come to know because of the platform, because of YouTube. It is the Jeeps, it is the vintage cars in this case that has made the connections for us. But I've met a lot of really great people, and it's been a fun experience. Let me introduce you to some of the YouTubers that I've come to know through YouTube. Some of you I've met personally. We talk. We have a networking relationship with each other. I'm going to introduce you guys as well. And there's also these guys that I haven't met yet, but who have been more than willing to offer me information and suggestions based on their experience working with old vintage cars or old vintage Jeep. Normal folks struggling to learn how to fix these old things and keep these things all running. And those are the YouTubers that I enjoy the most. People like me who have a passion for this and simply want to share that passion with all of you. Anyway, let me introduce you to some fellow YouTubers. So the first group of channels that I want to share with you are guys that I actually know and communicate with on a regular basis. Now I'm sharing these in no particular order, but the first up is Brian Gainey, and Brian has the channel Real World Garage. Now, I first met Brian through a mutual friend, and this was way years ago, way back at the beginning. I was restoring an old 1973 Yamaha RT3360 trail bike, and I had owned this bike since it was new, and it was stored for over 20 years. That seems to be the nature of my life when it comes to old cars. So the first thing that I noticed when I started the restoration was the amount of rust inside the gas tank. And I knew I had to get all of that rust scaling out before I put any gas in and tried to get this bike started. And I did not want to replace the tank. There was no leaks, there was no pitting, there were no holes in it to worry about. I just needed to get that rust scale out of the inside. So I went looking on YouTube, searching how do you clean out rusty gas tanks, and Brian's video came up. Brian, in the early days, was doing a lot of restoration work on old outboard motors, and he had cleaned the rust out of a tank on his one of his outboard motors, and believe it or not, he used electricity and salt water. And I'm thinking, this cannot be good. But it turned out that it was a very practical and very easy method to use. So I used Brian's method, cleaned the rust out of that gas tank, and I'll put a link up here. And fortunately, the bike runs. It runs really well. So Real World Garage. The next channel I want to talk about is Portrayal, and it is run by a good friend of mine, Patrick Tipton. Now, if any of you are in the vintage military Jeep world, you will know Patrick through his publishing company, Portrayal Press. great source of information if you are looking to restore anything or understand anything about military vehicles from the past. Pat and I met when I messaged him asking him a question about my old Willys MB Jeep. Anyway, we began to communicate, we began to talk, and we found out we had a whole lot of things in common. And I want to do another video here coming up on skill sets, and specifically with some of the conversations that Pat and I have had about skills and skill sets. Patrick is one of these guys that has endless energy and every day gets up and does what he does. And in the last 6 or 8 months or a year, Pat has just completely restored an old Willys MB on his channel. So Patrick Tipton in Portrayal on YouTube. My friend Matt DeFilio, who along with his daughter Ellie runs the YouTube channel Ellie's Garage. Matt and Ellie are restoring a Ford Falcon. Neither one of them are mechanics by training. In fact, Matt is a professional filmmaker. And Matt is responsible for teaching me this concept of character or developing character. So whether it's you as the person on camera or the vehicle itself, character becomes important, or character development becomes important to keep people interested in the projects, in the videos themselves. And Matt kind of taught me that in one of our many conversations. And Carl is Ellie's car. Carl is the Falcon that they're restoring. And Carl has become a central character along with Ellie in the development of that channel itself. And Matt and Ellie are on a little bit of a hiatus right now because Ellie has graduated from high school and she's on her way to college. So obviously you can't be filming regular videos when one of your important cast members aren't available. And I think this is an important point to make, because if you become a YouTuber, one of the conversations almost always goes down to burnout. You know, you do something on such a regular basis that you feel this obligation to get the next episode or the next piece of content out. And taking time off is okay. And I think that's an important lesson to learn if you want to become a YouTuber, or if you are a YouTuber. When it's time to take some time off, just take some time off. So Matt and Ellie, or Ellie's Garage. Straight A 6 Fan is a YouTube channel run by Grant Tommy. I started watching Grant's channel well before I ever met him. And in fact, I met Grant last summer down in South Carolina when we were both asked to be a part of a panel discussion about YouTube and making YouTube and what are some of the challenges making YouTube. This is the first time that Grant and I were actually in the same room together. Again, we found out we had a lot of things in common, and we became friends over the last several months. Grant is an architect by training, but Grant's interest in automobiles, the subtitle of his channel is Offbeat Hot Rodding. And Grant is this guy who believes that you don't need to have lots of money or go after that really classic car that everybody's after. That there are cars out there that can be had for little money and then modified and hot rodded and enjoyed. So Grant's channel is dedicated to some of these offbeat, affordable cars that you might not think about. You might not think that this is an opportunity to build something that you can hot rod, that you can modify. Straight A 6 Fan, Grant Tommy, check him out. The last channel I want to showcase is somebody who I have become really close friends with over the last year, and that is Stephen Holtz, and his channel is Just Drive It. I met Stephen for the first time down in South Carolina the same week that I met Grant Tommy. Stephen was a friend of my friend Jeff Ford, And Jeff was having a 60th birthday party, and my wife and I, Lynn, went down to celebrate Jeff's birthday. Stephen had driven his just finished classic car. It's an old Ford Fairlane, I believe, from Texas to South Carolina. And besides Stephen being one hell of a nice guy, I was just really super impressed that somebody would take a car that they had literally just finished the day before, put his family in it, and drive that 1,200 miles from Texas to South Carolina. Anyway, Stephen is a terrific character, terrific man. Stephen is an engineer on offshore lift boats. So these classic cars is his escape from sort of the tension and the profession that he does, being out on the ocean, sort of servicing these offshore lift boats. I asked Stephen once, what's the worst job that you have on one of these boats? And he said, fixing toilets. So Stephen does it all. He does everything from main engines all the way down to fixing toilets, which is why I really admire Stephen. He's a hell of a guy. His channel, Just Drive It, Stephen rescues these old classic cars. He sometimes goes to junkyards, pulls them out, and brings them home and makes them whole again. Stephen is one hell of a mechanic. And the boy knows so much, I just often just shake my head at how he just spits this information out of the top of his head. Stephen, I've watched him go from 250 subscribers all the way up to now, I think he's at 1,200. He is working his tail off to grow this channel. So Stephen Holtz, Just Drive It. I really do encourage you to go watch one of Stephen's videos. If you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you very much, a whole lot. And in fact, if you are considering becoming a YouTuber, watch time is one of those major metrics that the algorithms search for sharing your channel with other people. So if you've been through this entire thing, I really do appreciate it, because that helps elevate my watch time. Now, at the same time, I want to make sure that I've given value to you, that I've produced some videos that are useful to you. Before I let you go on this, I want to share 3 more channels with you. These are small channels, new channels that I haven't spent a lot of time with, but I have had conversation and communication with the owners of these channels. They've been helpful to me in a few respects on some of my projects, so I want to give a really quick shout out to them. The first is Jason Falk, Indirect Connection. Jason is, I think he's got only a couple hundred subscribers. Jason is doing almost all Plymouth content. So if you like Plymouths, head on over and check out Jason's channel, Indirect Connection. The other is Pete Singleton. I started following Pete here, I don't know, a couple, 3 months. Pete's channel is Thunderbolt, the Willys Jeep. Pete is restoring a 1948 CJ2A. Pete's coming up with some really nice content. Pete is starting to accelerate the amount of videos that he's putting up. He is hoping sometime in the next month or 2 to have that Jeep up and running for the first time in for however long you've been working on it, Pete. You can leave a comment if you want. The other one, I just discovered this guy. His name is Bradley Ray. Turns out Bradley's been following my Jeep content all the way back to 6 Rounds Studio, and then he came over to the new channel, Rust to Resurrection, and started following me there as well. Bradley contacted me when I was doing the oil change on the CJ2, making some suggestions, some recommendations based on the things that he had learned about putting the proper oils into these older Jeeps, and I appreciated that. That led to several communications and a few emails. So Bradley, glad to have you on board. Glad that we're getting to know each other. Before I let you go, I thought it would be appropriate to end this video up here in the editing studio. There's a couple other channels, a couple other guys I want to give a shout out to. Guys that have been really important to me as I've figured this whole YouTube thing out. It can be a challenge, and having somebody to talk to mentor, can always help ease that transition to not having ever done this to making some really good content. The first guy I want to talk about is Jeff Ford. Jeff owns the channel Auto Resto Mod. Jeff has been a mentor and he has become one of my best friends. When I first started hanging with Jeff, he had just over 40,000 subs. He is now at 110,000 subs. Not only was Jeff a mentor, he was a teacher. I learned so much early on from Jeff on things like camera placements, the rules of third. Jeff is the one that taught me 2-camera shoots. He taught me the value of having 2 cameras and how it made editing so much easier to do when you come into post. Jeff has just taught me so much about filming for YouTube. The second guy that I want to give a shout out to is Dan Courier. Dan owns Courier Media, and he also owns the channel Creator Fundamentals. When I first started YouTube all those years ago, I needed to learn as much about the fundamentals of making videos, uploading videos, how to get recognized by the algorithms, how to do things in the most appropriate way. Dan Courier and Creator Fundamentals was one of those early channels that I followed because Dan was doing these detailed explanations on YouTube and the algorithms and how to get discovered and how to film and how to light. So Dan and I are not friends, but we are friendly. We know each other. We know who each other is. Dan started this creator conference called People of Video here in the Northeast. Dan was attending a lot of these video maker conferences around the country, and he always was bothered that there wasn't something on the East Coast, up in the Northeast, that video creators up here could attend without having to go through the expense of travel and the expense of getting into these larger shows. Dan has done this 3 years in a row. I'm not sure if Dan's going to do this a 4th year. He says he is. I got to meet so many great and famous YouTubers, and I learned a lot from Dan's conference. It was an amazing experience, absorbing all of the energy of all of those creators in the room, both the experience and the people who were there like me, trying to learn as much as we could so that we could improve our videos, improve our content, so that all of you got the most meaningful content that we possibly could produce for you. So Dan and Jeff, this is a special shout out to the 2 of you. Thank you guys both for being here. Guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment. Comments are the lifeblood of a channel. If you are a new automotive content creator here on YouTube, please leave your contact, leave your information, leave your channel in the comments so that other folks can see what you do. I really appreciate you guys for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.